السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين وصلى الله وبارك على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيد النبيين وإمام المتقين وقائد الغر المحجلين محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم الذي مبعوث رحمة للعالمين. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, أَلَمْ نَشْرَحْ لَكَ صَدْرَكَ. I've talked about this a couple of times, but it's one of the most fruitful ways to read the Quran is with there's a phrase in usul tafseer that is al-Quran yufassiru ba'duhu ba'da. The Quran, parts of the Quran explain other parts of the Quran. So one of the most fruitful ways of looking at meaning in the Quran is to see how parts of the Quran connect with other parts of the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala starts Surah Sharh with أَلَمْ نَشْرَحْ لَكَ صَدْرَكَ. Have you not opened your chest? There are two places, and this sharaha can mean a couple of things. But one of them can mean to make your chest, it's actually like it's an image. It's a feeling. So when you feel distress, it feels like your chest is squeezing in on you. It feels like your chest is tightening. The Quran calls this daqa or abaqa. For example, وَضَاقَتْ عَلَيْهِمُ الْأَرْضُ وَضَاقَتْ عَلَيْهِمْ أَنفُسُهُمْ وَظَنُّوا أَنْ لَا مَلْجَأَ مِنَ اللَّهِ إِلَّا إِلَيْهِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about the three that stayed back in Tabuk. And He says that the earth squeezed in on them and their own selves squeezed in on them until they realized that there was no place to run from Allah except to Him. There's another place where Allah Ta'ala uses daqa like this. There's a lot of places actually. But one of the most prominent ones is in Surah Al-Hijr, the end of Surah Al-Hijr. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَقَدْ نَعْلَمُ أَنَّكَ يَضِيقُ صَدْرُكَ بِمَا يَقُولُ. That we know that your chest squeezes, your chest becomes tight because of what they say. And it's this particular ayah that I think it's very important to read Surah Sharh as in conversation with these ayahs and the ayahs of Surah Duha. Because in one place Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam that we know that your chest squeezes. It becomes tight. It becomes difficult. What they say to you. There's another place also in Surah Al-An'am, وَلَقَدْ نَعْلَمُ أَنَّهُ يَضِيقُ صَدْرُكَ مَا يَقُولُ فَإِنَّهُمْ لَا يُكَذِّبُونَكَ وَلَكِنَّ الظَّالِمِينَ بِآيَاتِ اللَّهِ يَجْحَدُونَ. When the kuffar used to say things to the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it used to be emotionally distressing. Emotionally very distressing. And there's a tendency to downplay emotional reaction and to look at physical realities. For example, we say so-and-so lived a very hard life. And we can mean by that their material reality was very minimal. That they had like they grew up in a low-income environment. They didn't have, they didn't have the luxuries of the world. But if somebody grows up in a big house and a big car and has terrible parents, we don't say that he lived a difficult life, a hard life. The reality is, all suffering is emotional. All suffering is emotional. You can go to a village where they don't have running water, and you can find the happiest people. Because the people around them are good. Because the people around them love them and cherish them and value them and build them up. And so their lives, they grow up in a difficult circumstance. But their chest is not tightened. And you can find people who grow up in mansions with terrible parents and terrible environment, emotional environment, and they are damaged people inside out. And they are people who've experienced a lot of emotional suffering. So this is why I think it's important to say that our lives are hard and difficult based on material circumstances. But our joys and our sorrows are all the same. You can find a person living in the U.S. that has the same joy and the same sorrow as somebody living in a impoverished village somewhere in Asia. Because our joys and our sorrows are all the same. But the circumstances of our life, the material circumstances, are either hard or difficult. And this goes back to how the Rasul ﷺ was emotionally affected by the way that he was rejected by the kuffar. You have to remember, the kuffar of Quraysh, when they were emotionally rejecting the Rasul ﷺ, it wasn't just, it's not like I go out into the town square and I set up a soapbox and I get up there and I say, oh people of Sterling, there is Allah and then people come and throw tomatoes at me. I don't know this person who's throwing a tomato at me. I don't know this person I didn't grow up with the person who's rejecting me. They were all family for the Rasul sallallahu. They were all uncles. They were cousins. They were relations from marriage. This wasn't random people that were rejecting him. It was his own family that was rejecting him. It was his tribe that was rejecting him. And not only were they rejecting him, it was the people who knew him to be the best yesterday who were saying the worst things about him today. This caused serious emotional distress for the Rasul. To be rejected by your own people, your own tribe, your own family, your own uncles. And this is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes, وَلَقَدْ نَعْلَمُ أَنَّكَ يَضِيقُ صَدْرُكَ بِمَا يَقُولُونَ. Your chest tightens, it squeezes because of what they say. What's the remedy for that? فَسَبِّحْ بِحَمْدِ رَبِّكَ وَكُمْ مِنَ السَّاجِدِينَ. Make tasbih of Allah and be amongst those who do sajda. وَعْبُدْ رَبَّكَ حَتَّى يَأْتِيَكَ الْيَقِينَ. And worship Allah until you reach yaqeen. Yaqeen here means, the ulama usually say it means death. It doesn't mean that, you reach certainty of Allah and now you don't have to pray anymore. No. The Quran describes ayn al-yaqeen as the yaqeen that comes from seeing the hellfire with your own eyes. That means the afterlife. So why is the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam commanded to do tasbih? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by the way, is not telling the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam in these ayahs in Surah Hijr that don't worry, everything will be fine, everything will be okay, everybody who rejected you will become Muslim, you're going to be, you're going to be the one who wins at the end. This is not what Allah ta'ala is saying. What is the remedy that Allah gives? فَسَبِّحْ بِحَمْدِ رَبِّكَ وَكُمْ مِنَ السَّاجِدِينَ. You feel this emotional turmoil? Fine. Praise Allah. You feel this emotional turmoil? Praise Allah and make sajda to Him. Because the way that the outside inputs to us are not directly correlated with our reaction to those inputs. If somebody says terrible things to me, it's not a direct correlation for me to have to feel a certain way and react a certain way. There's a certain amount of choice that I have in that. And that choice, Allah is saying, make the choice of doing tasbih of Allah. Why? أَلَا بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ تَطْمَئِنُّ الْقُلُوبِ. By the dhikr of Allah, hearts find peace. Now we go back to Surah Sharh. Surah Sharh is like a response to these last few ayahs of Surah Al-Hijr and to Surah Al-Duha. And now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, in those ayahs, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, no, you're feeling like this turmoil, praise Allah. In Surah Sharh, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, didn't we expand, didn't we open your chest Sharaha means to literally to like cut something open. Then we open your chest and we remove the weight on your back. You can, you sometimes you feel like your emotional baggage is like a baggage that you're literally carrying on your chest. It becomes very difficult to kind of move sometimes. Didn't we lighten the weight that was pressing down on your back, and we elevated your remembrance? These ayahs are like a direct response to the ayahs that where Allah Ta'ala is saying, do X, Y, Z when you are feeling in turmoil. It's like, okay, now you did that, and you are no longer in emotional turmoil. Then remember, inna ma'al usri yusra. Inna ma'al usri yusra, inna ma'al usri yusra. Indeed, with difficulty comes what? Ease. Look at the life of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The most difficult moments of his life came with some of the most powerful moments of ease. What were the two most difficult moments of his life? Aam al-Huzn and Ta'if. Aam al-Huzn and Ta'if. What happens? What is the ease that comes with Aam al-Huzn? Who dies in Aam al-Huzn? Abu Talib and Khadija radiallahu anha. Right, the two most important people to him, the two people that give him the most support and the most ease. So what is the ease that comes with Aam al-Huzn? Isra and Mi'raj. Isra and Mi'raj is in Aam al-Huzn. And it is like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala removes the two biggest sources of comfort for the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam and gives him not just the speaking with him in Jannah, but he gives him something very particular. What is that? Salah. How does this relate back to Surah Hijr? فَسَبِّحْ بِحَمْدِ رَبِّكَ وَكُمْ مِنَ السَّاجِدِينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that comfort is taken from him, but another source of comfort is given to him. That comfort is salah. What is in Ta'if, what is the ease that is given to him? He's sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he's rejected by the people of Ta'if, and he's stoned head to toe until he's bleeding to the point where his slippers, his na'alain, are sticking to him from the blood. What is the ease that he's given in Ta'if? When he comes back from Ta'if and he's sitting at the tree, he makes a dua, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. It's a very powerful dua. You should go home and Google dua Ta'if. And one of the eases that he gets is that the jinn that are in the valley, they all come to Islam in that moment. Ta'if is also the harbinger of the hijrah. Ta'if is also the moment in which the hijrah really starts, like the opening of Medina really starts. There's a series of events that starts from Ta'if that leads to the opening of Medina. In every moment of difficulty in the life of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there is immense ease. And this is something that's very important for us to take for our own lives, is that when we are in a moment of difficulty, when we are in a moment of constriction, what some of the Ahl Suluk call, they say that all life is qabd and bast. Qabd is when you are in a moment of, like you're being squeezed, and bast is where it's being opened. When you're in this moment of qabd, it's very useful to think of all the ways that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made this moment easy for you. There are people who go through immense difficulty, and the difficulty hits right at the moment where their responsibilities are the lightest, or they have family and friends around them, and so they're able to be held by the people around them in order to feel their difficulties. Do this exercise. If you're in a situation of difficulty, do this exercise. Write down on a piece of paper all the ways Allah has made this moment of difficulty easy for you. All the eases He's provided for you in this moment of difficulty. That if they weren't there, the difficulty would be even harder. This is one of the ways of seeing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes something, gives something. And what He gives is always better than what He takes. He takes something, and He gives something, and what He's giving may not be what we want at the time, but give it some time. And you realize what He gave you is what you needed all along. Now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that we solved all your issues, we gave you ease, so what do? فَإِذَا فَرَغْتَ فَانْصَبْ وَإِلَىٰ رَبِّكَ فَارْغَبْ. Very shortly, that go back to Allah. Go back to Allah. Continue worshiping Allah. What does this mean? It means when you're in difficulty, your heart is being squeezed, you're in a terrible circumstance. What's the remedy of it? Turn to Allah. فَسَبِّحْ بِحَمْدِ رَبِّكَ وَكُن مِّنَ السَّاجِدِينَ. But now you're in ease, now things have been lifted, now things are better. What do? Go back to Allah. In every circumstance of life, we are either praying to Allah to lift our difficulties, or we are praying to Him to thank Him. But there is never a moment in which we are not recognizing the hand of Allah in our lives. And we're not recognizing that our souls, our lives, ourselves, rest in the hands of Allah. And we end with this. This is why the Rasul ﷺ used to constantly, when he would swear, one of the qasams he would take. Well, swear not like swearing, but swearing is like making a qasam. One of the qasams he would make frequently is, I swear by the one who holds my nafs between his hands. I swear by the one who holds my life, myself, between his hands. Always turn back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in every single circumstance. If we are in a circumstance of real difficulty and our chest is squeezed, turn back to Allah, asking Him to lift our difficulties. And if we are in a circumstance in which Allah has lifted our difficulties from us and given us ease, we turn back to Allah in thanks. And one of the biggest thanks we can do to Allah is to use the ease He has given us to make things easy for people that are difficult for them. Like Allah, the Rasul ﷺ says, "Al-khalqu iyal Allah, wa ahabbuhum ilayhi anfa'uhum li'iyalih." That all of creation is the dependence of Allah. And the most beloved to Him are the ones who are most useful to His dependents. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us of those who are always turning back to Allah in difficulty and ease. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us of those who never lose hope in the mercy of Allah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us of those that in times of difficulty remember Him as a source of our relief, and the time of ease remember Him as a source of everything, every bounty we've been given. اللهم لك الحمد كله ولك الشكر كله وإليك يرجع الأمر كله علانيته وسره يا رب لك الحمد كما ينبغي لجلال وجهك وعظيم سلطانك سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك عدد خلقك ورضا نفسك وزنة عرشك ومداد كلماتك سبحان ذي الجبروت سبحان ذي الملكوت سبحان ذي الكبرياء الحي الذي لا يموت اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على الحبيب في الأولين وصل وسلم وبارك عليه في الآخرين وصل وسلم وبارك عليه دائما أبدا في كل وقت وحين اللهم إنا نسألك حبك وحب من يحبك وحب عمل يقربنا إلى حبك اللهم اجعل جمعنا هذا جمعا مرحوما وتفرقنا من بعده تفرقا معصوما ولا تجعل فينا ولا منا ولا بيننا شقيا ولا محروما اللهم إنا نسألك رضاك والجنة ونعوذ بك من سخطك والنار، وأدخلنا الجنة مع الأبرار برحمتك يا عزيز يا غفار. اللهم أدخلنا برحمتك جنات النعيم مع النبيين والصديقين والشهداء والصالحين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. وصلى الله وبارك على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين، وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين.